Muy buenos días para todos los que se conectan a esta hora a una nueva sesión de Edu.Digital Bilingüe, un espacio del Centro de Estudios Aeronáuticos para estar más cerca de ustedes y hablar de temas que contribuyen a nuestra calidad de vida. En la charla de hoy, Talking About Habits and Customs, nos acompaña el profesional Néstor. Bienvenido, profe Néstor, a Edu.Digital Bilingüe.
Thank you, Lena. Good morning, Néstor here. And today lesson we're going to talk about in this series how we're going to talk about habits and customs. So welcome back to Edu.Digital Bilingüe. For today's lesson, we're going to start making some differences in some specific vocabulary that we have in English. And additional, we're going to talk about some adverbs of frequency that they are very useful when we're talking about the habits. And finally, we're going to talk about some customs and what's the difference between habits and customs. So let's get started. So as I told you before, so the idea is that we are going to practice how to talk about habits and customs. So first of all, our context today, it's going to be related to daily habits, something that is like a repetition day by day. So we're going to talk about, for example, different parts of the day, during the morning, during the afternoon, and during the evening. It's possible that we can make some examples in different times of the day. Okay, so this is going to be our context today. And first of all, as always, we're going to talk about new words. And in this part, maybe they are not really new, but they are very, very common, like do and make. But sometimes it's difficult to understand what's the difference between do and make, and additional in which specific cases we are gonna use these verbs, okay? So I have some examples here in the presentation, like for example, make the bed, make the food, do the exercises, make the exercises, do a favor, or do the dishes. Now, sometimes it's controversial because some people try to make them or separate the use of do and make. Sometimes they say, okay, you have to make the relation with make, taking into account when you construct, you make a construction or building of something. And do is when you maybe you develop one activity, yeah? In my case, sometimes it's difficult to maybe separate these two specific verbs. So sometimes it's difficult, yeah? Sometimes it's difficult to understand in which position you have to use make and which position you have to use do. So now, for me, sometimes it's more useful if you try to practice and practice and practice, because they are called in English collocations. For example, in this number one, make the bed, when you make the bed, is that something that you do every day, yeah, that you make the bed, so you organize, you clean your bed and so on. And so in this moment you can maybe make the relationship with construction, yes, because you are not like a carpenter constructing your bed every day. So maybe in this context it's not possible to use. So this is one expression, like a collocation. How can you make realize this practice? So you have to make many exercises in order to complete that. So for example, make food. Normally in English, make is the most useful verb to talk about food. Yeah, for example, when you make your food, make your lunch, make your breakfast, make a cake. Yeah, so in this context, it's possible that you can make the relationship. Okay, make sometimes or usually is with food. Do the exercises and make exercises. It's possible both. And you say, okay, but why? For example, maybe it's possible that if we make like an example, make the exercises. For example, the teacher makes the exercises. So in this part is that the teacher is creating, yeah? So I'm gonna create the exercises for my students. In this context, it's possible to use make. And now the students, they are going to develop, so they are going to do the exercises. So this is like a little difference. We're talking about creating and making. And on the other hand, we have like you are developing one activity, that is do the exercises. So the teacher makes the exercises, the students do the exercises. In this context is like a little example. What's the difference in these two contexts? Now, for example, we have do a favor and do the dishes. So now, for example, if you make the relation with do the dishes, you can translate, so the verb do, always that we have like a hacer. No, in this context, we can translate from English to Spanish these verbs. As always, we know that is hacer or construir. No, sometimes it's impossible to translate everything word as always you do. So in this context, we can translate do the dishes like you can say lavar los platos. Okay, but you say, okay, do lavar. Yes, that doesn't have any connection. That's why my recommendation is to practice and practice and practice the collocations using do and make. Sometimes the language is arbitrary and they decide, okay, I don't have any reason, any logical explanation, just because, okay? So sometimes in my classes, I use this expression and you have to realize that sometimes it's impossible, or maybe it doesn't have any logical, it doesn't have any explanation. Some maybe differences between Spanish and English. So sometimes when you listen just because, is that they are some expressions that you have to learn as they present. That's it, okay? Just because is what we say in Spanish sometimes, porque sí, okay? Just because, as you say, but why? I don't understand, yeah? Sometimes you have to just memorize or just practice in this part, okay? So in this context, I'm gonna give you at the end of this lesson, I'm gonna give you one link where you can go and practice a lot of exercises between make and do, okay? The idea is that you can practice. So at the end of this lesson, I'm gonna give you one link you can use in order to make the difference between these two expressions, okay? So this is the first part of today's lesson, the differences between do and make. And now we're gonna continue with the second part, or maybe the biggest part, that is going to talk about the adverbs of frequency, actually. Okay, so now in this part I have some examples, do versus make. So look at this, we have some examples for work, jobs, and tasks. So do the housework, do your homework, do a good job, do your chores. Or for example, on the other hand, we have product and material origin. So made of gold, made from grapes, made in China, made by me. Or produce a reaction, make your eyes water, make you happy, make you sleepy, make you smile. So we have some collocations and there are a lot of examples. Now, for example, this one, do your hair. But when you listen, do your hair, how can you make the relation between the verb do and your hair, yeah? Sometimes it's difficult to understand, but you have to practice what are the meaning of this one. So for example, do the laundry, yeah? So in Spanish, we have a different relation. So for example, do your hair is peinarte, okay? So for example, it's possible do your hair in a cord, or for example, straightened, yeah? This is specific, for example, for women. Women try to do every day these kind of things. For men, it's maybe not very common, but it's a possibility. Now, do the laundry. Yes, something similar to do the dishes. We have said that do the dishes is lavar los platos. Do the laundry, lavar la ropa. Okay, so look at that. This doesn't some maybe sense sometimes when you make the translation, but these are some examples. So That's why my recommendation is practice and practice and practice this specific topic. Okay, so let's continue with this part that is adverbs of frequency. So when we're going to talk about adverbs of frequency, normally we're going to talk about the simple present, okay? Or, for example, it's possible talking about the past, okay? Or maybe if you have some wishes and some plans for the future, it's possible to use these adverbs of frequency. For today's lesson, we're going to talk about the simple present, okay? Because it's possible that you can use in any time. So in this part, we have what's the difference between these adverbs of frequency. In this presentation, in this slide, we have a list that we can start from always, that is the 100%, and finally we have never, that is the 0%. So it depends maybe in the percentage of maybe the developing of the action that you do. Yeah, for example, sometimes that people, they have some differences, and that's why we talk about habits. Habits are going to be the activities that you do, but it's personal, yeah? So for example, I have some different habits that you have, yeah? For example, people that they work in, for example, at night shifts, they have different habits that I have because, for example, normally I work during the day. Some other people, they always work at night. Yeah, so in this part we have some different habits, and it depends into the people. Okay, so now in this part you have this list: always, usually, normally, generally, often, frequently, sometimes, occasionally, seldom, rarely, and never. Okay, so maybe most of these words, they have like a meaning in Spanish, and a specific word for Spanish, but sometimes they don't. So for example, seldom and rarely, these two words, maybe they have the same meaning in Spanish, and is maybe most common try to translate it as this word in Spanish. Okay, rarely, raramente. Yeah, but in this context, maybe you can translate these two words with the same meaning in Spanish, seldom and rarely. What's the difference in English? So it's going to be the repetition of these actions. Okay, so rarely is around 5% and seldom 10%. So what it means is that seldom is with more frequency than rarely. Basically, this is the difference, because in Spanish they have the same meaning, raramente. Okay, so in this part, the idea is that try that you can maybe practice these specific modal verbs, adverbs of frequency, in order to recognize which ones, for example, they have the most frequency, and which ones they don't, they have the less frequency. Okay, so now in simple present, how can you organize the structure of the sentences? Okay, so as you can see, I use the pronoun I, and I'm going to add these ones, the adverbs of frequency. So for example, I can start I always, I usually, I normally, and after that I'm gonna use a verb, okay, a principle or the main action of the, for example, of the sentence. In this context, I have some specific expressions or maybe a specific activities that we do every day. Now, so the idea is that in this part, I'm going to share with you during the starting day. Okay, when you start the day is in the morning. Okay, so you have some specific activities you develop during the morning. So in this context, we have the pronoun I, after we have the adverb of frequency, and after we have the specific action that is a verb. So in this case, I have brush, make, have, eat, take, hope, or do. So those are going to be the main verbs, the main actions, okay? So in this part, they are verbs. So we have the pronoun, we have the adverb of frequency, okay? And we have verbs. So these are the three parts of the sentence: the pronoun, the adverb of frequency, and the verb. Okay, so it's going to be like the organization of the sentences. Now we have some complements, and those examples, they are really short. In this slide, they are really short. So for example, I can say, for example, in my case, this is one example of mine. So for example, brush my teeth. Obviously, maybe everyone do this. So I can see, I always brush my teeth, okay? Or I can say, starting the day, I always brush my teeth. Okay, so for example, in my case, sometimes, this is not very common, but I sometimes make breakfast, okay, because this is not very common in my life. So I sometimes make breakfast, okay, so it's like a 50%. It's not every day, it's not always, but sometimes I make breakfast. It's possible, and there are some specific exceptions that you can use the modal verbs at the beginning. Yeah, for example, it's possible to use normally, or sometimes, maybe generally, they are possible to use at the beginning of the sentence. So you can say, normally I make breakfast, or sometimes I make breakfast, okay? But they are three exceptions, okay? And these are the most common maybe cases, but most of them, they are going to be in this location after the subject in this case. And remember that we are talking in simple present. This lesson, we are making emphasis in simple present, okay? Because with the verb to be, it's possible that maybe we change the order, okay? But in this lesson, we are practicing simple present, so this is going to be the structure of the sentence. So another example, for example, we can say, I usually have breakfast, or I usually eat breakfast, okay? And now, for example, this one, take a shower or take a bath. What's the difference between take a shower and take a bath? Take a shower is when maybe you are receiving the water from the upside of your bathroom, yeah? And a bath is when you sit in a bath. So maybe you are taking like a bubble bath, yes, and it's possible that you take around, I don't know, like 15 minutes into the bath, yeah. And there is a number 3 option talking about this specific context, hopping the bath. For example, in my case, I occasionally hop in the bath. What is the meaning of this expression? Hop in the bath is when you are running out of time and you have to maybe run, yes, because you don't have enough time. So I occasionally hop in the bath. That is maybe that you maybe run, you take a very quick shower, and you have to go and take your maybe clothes in and go to the work. Okay, so I occasionally hop in the bath. This is one other expression that you can use when, for example, you don't have enough time, you have to run with some things. So this is one of the possibilities. As I explained you before in this part, I have one example with do. Okay, do my hair. So for men, it's very maybe quickly. So maybe you use some cream and you do your hair. But for women, sometimes it's more, maybe it takes more time. So for example, when they try to straighten her hair, or for example, when they make like a curl, yes. So for women, it's more maybe difficult sometimes, so it takes more time. So now, this is one example about how can you use the adverbs of frequency starting the day. Now, my recommendation, I remember when we were talking in one of the last lessons, maybe in the number 4, I give you some tips when you can extend your answers. And remember that my recommendation was to use the W questions, okay, or the WH words. So my recommendation was, okay, you can talk about what are you doing or what is the action. For example, he watches CNN news. Now you can extend your answer, for example, using the W's words, like for example, when, where, who, and why. For example, guys, if you didn't see this class, I invite you in order to go to the stream. Maybe you can check this class. Then we were talking about this tip that we can extend our answers. So in that class, we were talking about, for example, this one. He watches CNN news every day at home with his daughter because of its reports and commentaries. Okay, so if you want to complete more, so you can extend your answers. So the recommendation is that you can answer these W questions during the sentence, during the speech. So this is my recommendation today again, okay? So look at this, we can continue extending our answers. He watches CNN news every day in the evening at home in the living room with his daughter and his son because of its reports and commentators. Okay, so this is one of the examples that we saw in the previous class. Okay, how to extend your answers in English. So my invitation is if you want to practice this part, so you can go to the stream and you can watch again this video. Okay, so there are two pictures that I use in that class. And now, if I am talking about now, not starting, not in the morning, but maybe during the day. So I have some examples here, like lunch meetings, class, study, and friends, okay? So now look at, is the same example using the pronoun at the beginning of the subject in this sentence. After, we're gonna talk about the adverb of frequency. And during the day, I have some expressions here. So for example, we can say, I usually go for lunch, okay? Or another possibility, I usually grab lunch, okay? In this part, the expression grab lunch is that in this specific context about lunch is that you have maybe you run for the restaurant, you grab your lunch very quickly and you return to your activities. It's possible to return to your work. So grab lunch is that you can go to the restaurant, maybe you grab your lunch and you return to your office, okay? So this is one expression that sometimes it happens, right? When, for example, we don't have enough time, so you have to maybe have lunch really quickly, so you use this expression. For example, for some people, it's possible that it's maybe with more frequency, so they use I always grab lunch or I usually grab lunch. Or for some people, no, I don't have any problem. I have a lot of time, so I never grab lunch. I always have a lot of time to lunch. Okay, so this is maybe typically differences between the habits of people. The second expression is have meetings. Yes, it's very common. For example, in the job, and you have meetings. So, for example, for some students, they have meetings. So, for example, in Aeronáutica Civil, I normally have meetings. Okay, so it's possible that is one meeting during the day or two meetings during the day, or I don't know. For some people, it's just one meeting during the week. So it's possible that you can say I occasionally have meetings. Okay, so it's not very common. It's like a 30% no more. So this is one example. The number 3 in this list, I have go to class. Okay, for people that they usually go to class, so it's very popular. Then maybe they do during the week. So I usually go to class from Monday to Friday, for example. Okay, I see friends. So for example, if I want to extend my answer, so I'm gonna start answering this. Okay, so what, when, where, who, why. It's possible that I can say I sometimes see friends on weekends in a restaurant with Carolina and Marta because we like to eat some food during the weekend. Yeah, so this is the example that you can extend your answers. So basically, this is the recommendation always. Not try to make list, but you can extend your answers. And this is one of the tips. This is one recommendation. Maybe this is not always what is going to happen, but this is one of our recommendations. And finally, we have a study and run errands. So now, a study, so maybe it's possible what you can see. So for example, I occasionally study English on Wednesdays, virtual, or maybe we can say in Teams, with teacher Nestor, because I like to learn English. Okay, so this is one of the recommendations, and this is one of the use of this expression, that is a study. Now, the final example, that is run errands. So this expression is very common when, for example, you develop a small task, okay, a small task that you need to do during the day. So a small task, it means that, for example, you go to the bank, or maybe you go to the dentist, or you go to the supermarket. It's a small task. So it's possible that you can say, so I always run errands at night, yeah, because it's maybe the time that you have some specific part of the day that you can go to do activities. So run errands, so they are tasks. Yes, for example, go to the bank, go to the supermarket, and I don't know, for example, it's possible go to the dentist. So this is some expression that you can use. Okay, so this is during the day. Okay, now finally we're going to talk about evening tonight. When we saw that, when we talk about evening, so maybe this is more common for some countries that they have seasons. So for example, remember that they have like a winter or summer, and they change some schedules. But normally we say that evening start at 6 p.m. and it goes maybe until 9 p.m. And night is maybe more than 9 p.m. and maybe until 3 a.m. That after 3 a.m. it starts the morning again. So maybe this is like a little example. So now, what do you do during the evenings and tonight? So in this part, we can use these expressions: meet for dinner or meet for drinks, do homework, cook dinner, do laundry, watch dishes, and watch a movie. Maybe these expressions that they are very, very common, okay? So again, what we can do in this part is that we can use the WH words in order to complete and extend our answers. So for example, in my case, meet for dinner, maybe it's not very common, so I occasionally meet for dinner with my friends in the restaurant in Chapinero neighborhood on Fridays, okay, on Fridays, because we like to talk about our jobs. It's just an example, okay? So this is one possibility. Or for example, I often do homework with my friend Carlos in his house on Monday's night, because we have to present one project for our class. Okay, so this is one of the examples that you can talk about your habits. And also we have some expressions like cook dinner. Okay, so maybe you are more familiar with this expression. Do laundry. Okay, we explained that this expression at the beginning. Do laundry. Do you remember? That is something related that you can wash your clothes. So this is the same. Do laundry. Another possibility, wash dishes. It's not always necessary to use do the dishes, to do the dishes in this case. Okay, those are possible. Okay, those are correct. You can say I wash dishes or I do the dishes. Okay, both are correct. There is not any difference. Okay, and finally, watch movies or watch a movie. Normally you said you use watch when you are, for example, at home. Okay, I watch a movie at home. And you can use the other possibility, that is the verb see, when you go to a theater. Okay, so it's more common to use this verb see. I see a movie in the theater. Okay, so this is more common in the theater, and watch is when you are at home. Okay, so basically this is some of the expressions, and specifically is necessary that you maybe practice this modal, sorry, this adverbs of frequency, always, usually, normally, generally. Okay, so maybe you can do some practicing at home. Okay, making some exercise, talking about your habits. Okay, so guys, so finally, what is the difference between habits and customs? Habits is about, maybe those are personal activities that you do. Okay, personal activities is related to habits. Now, customs are more related to what, for example, is our culture. Maybe for Colombian customs, it's like you share the behavior with more people. Is, for example, cultural customs. Yes, we as Colombian people, we have customs and we share customs. Habits is individual. So, for example, Nestor has different habits from Pedro. Okay, Pedro has different habits for Carolina. Okay, and now customs is that you share as a society. Okay, as a community. So I found these three maybe examples of customs, and this is how people from other country see Colombian people. So in the first one, they say, although extended families rarely live under one roof, apart from in rural areas, many live close and frequent one another's houses often. Okay, so look at this. This is one of the adverbs of frequency, rarely, remember? Okay, so in this example, they say, aunque las familias grandes raramente, o sea, raramente viven bajo el mismo techo y, digamos, en áreas rurales o apartados en áreas rurales, perdón, muchos viven cerca y con frecuencia visitan las casas de otros. Okay, this is very Colombian custom, yeah. This is different to another parts and other cultures around the world. For example, in American culture, this is not very common that you can live close to your family. Maybe one family lives here, another family lives here. In Colombian custom, maybe it's more common that we live close, maybe in the same city, or maybe that we visit our families or relatives very often. Okay, now in the second example, they say, in Colombia, you always provide your data and sync when paying by credit card. You'll also be asked how you want to divide the payment over time. Okay, so in this is very common when we talk about money. Maybe this is more for regionals, because this is more common, for example, in Bogota. Yeah, in Bogota, you always provide your data and sign when paying by credit card. Okay, that maybe you have to write your name, okay, Nestor Lozano, just your signature, and when you are paying with credit card. And what I mean about Bogota is the second part. You'd also be asked how you want to divide the payment over time. Yeah, maybe in for example, customs, it depends of the region. Yeah, because for example, in Bogota region doesn't have the same customs that, for example, the coast, or for example, the Antioquia region, or for example, I don't know, the Pacific region. They have different customs. Yes, so it depends of the region, it depends of the country. So they have different customs too. What is the meaning of this sentence? Normalmente ustedes siempre deben dar su información y firmar digamos, la tirilla cuando tú pagas con la tarjeta de crédito. Y tú siempre tienes también que, o bueno, también te van a preguntar cómo quieres dividir el pago. Digamos, en este caso, cuando decidimos pagar todos de la misma forma, o digamos, alguno dice, no, yo voy a pagar el día de hoy y el resto me gasta otro día, me invita otro día. Entonces, esto es muy colombiano, ¿no? Depende cómo quieras dividir la cuenta, o si de pronto en algunas otras regiones yo he visto que también normalmente, por ejemplo, siempre paga una persona y se deja invitar la otra ocasión. Entonces, eso depende también de las costumbres, ¿ok? Colombian customs. And the number 3, stores are often, look at here, the adverb frequency, stores are often divided into neighborhoods. So for example, pets neighborhood, lamps neighborhood, repairs, gadgets neighborhood. So for example, in Bogota, this is very common, okay? The stores are divided. So for example, in Bogota, when you have a problem with your car and you need to go to the mechanic, and there is a specific sector that is, for example, el 7 de agosto, one example, el 7 de agosto neighborhood is specific when you have a problem with your car and you have to go for a mechanic. For example, pets neighborhood is very common, for example, in Chapinero, that is over the Caracas Avenue. Okay, I'm not sure about the streets, but there is one specific sector that is, for example, for pets, and so on. Okay, so this is customs. In Colombia, we have customs to divide for sectors the stores. Okay, so I hope that maybe you understand what's the difference between habits and customs. And guys, so I have this information that I show you, these 3 examples. They were taken from this site, okay? This was like a presentation that one person that visited Colombia and when returned to its country, and they make like this little example, okay? So finally, we are gonna talk about some questions if you have some questions. So thank you very much for joining us for this lesson, and I hope that maybe you understand and to see this episode in Edu.Digital Bilingüe, and this is the time for our questions. Thank you.
Súper interesante, profe Néstor, muchísimas gracias. La gente ha estado súper activa preguntando el día de hoy y eso nos recuerden que pueden hacer cualquier tipo de pregunta que nosotros estamos súper dispuestos a responder. Por favor, no se queden con ningún tipo de duda. Nos encanta que pregunten y poderlos ayudar. En primer lugar, queremos saludar a la gente que se conecta desde diferentes lugares, diferentes regionales del país. Nos saludan desde Bogotá, desde Barranquilla. También nos saludan, profe, desde Bucaramanga, Cartagena. Y eso nos hace muy feliz saber que a través de esta herramienta estamos llegando a diferentes partes del país y bueno, que todos podamos aportar un granito de arena en la vida de todas las personas. Eso nos hace muy, muy feliz. Te mandan también las gracias, profe Néstor. Muchísimas gracias al profe. Excelente tema el día de hoy y muy útil. Entonces, profe, listo, empezamos con las preguntas.
Okay, let's do it.
Listo. Nos preguntan, can I do the laundry?
Can I do the laundry? Yes, for sure, but okay, esta pregunta de, digamos, ¿puedo lavar la ropa? Es, digamos, cuando estás pidiendo un permiso, ¿no? Entonces recordemos que habíamos tenido otra sesión de los modal verb, donde explicábamos que can, could eran para ofrecer, o sea, como solicitar algo, ofrecer algo o también pedir permiso. Entonces, en este caso, can I do the laundry? Estás pidiendo un permiso. Entonces, claramente este se puede dar, pero depende del contexto, ¿no? Tienes que hacerlo cuando vas a pedir permiso de lavar la ropa. Por ejemplo, es más, ahorita que está siendo muy común que haya, digamos, en conjuntos cerrados una lavandería comunitaria. Entonces, puedes entrar y de pronto utilizar una máquina. Entonces, de pronto, es de pronto un estilo muy americano, ¿no? Entonces, si estás en Estados Unidos y tú puedes pedir permiso para lavar la ropa en una máquina, es perfecto este ejemplo. Can I do the laundry?
O quizás estás en una casa de visita, ¿no? Y necesitas
por ejemplo,
hacer
alquilas por Airbnb, por ejemplo. Podría ser.
En un Airbnb, tienes toda la razón. Que ahorita es un medio de hospedaje muy usado. Bueno, acá nos preguntan, o sea que si yo lavo los platos todos los días sería make the dishes every day. I make the dishes every day.
No. Recuerden que explicamos que hay algunas unas oraciones específicas, lo que decíamos collocations. Entonces, unas actividades van con do y otras actividades van con make. Lo que explicábamos entonces es que no tenemos una regla general, pues, o bueno, algunos profesores lo enseñan, digamos, de cierta forma como make es para construir y crear y do es para realizar actividades, pero pues en mi caso algunas cosas no se pueden explicar de esa forma, entonces a mí no me gusta de pronto separarlos, digamos, o etiquetarlos, que este es con este y este es con este, sino tenemos que aprenderlo, tenemos que practicarlo, porque algunas son, digamos, oraciones que no, digamos, no tienen explicación. Entonces uno como profesor te dicen como, bueno, pero si esto era para construir, ¿por qué se está utilizando en este caso? Entonces no tienen explicación y ahí era donde yo le explicaba la oración o la expresión que yo utilizo es just because, porque ajá, porque sí. Entonces algunas veces el lenguaje es arbitrario y tenemos que aprenderlo. Entonces en este ejemplo siempre vamos a utilizar o do o wash para los platos. Entonces do the dishes o wash dishes. Y en este caso, pues, digamos, podemos utilizar acá I always do the dishes o I always wash dishes. ¿Ok? Entonces, en este caso, el verbo no sería make, sino sería do. I always do the dishes.
Ok, profe, sí, a veces nos confundimos entre el do y el make, pero es cuestión de práctica. Bueno, por acá también nos preguntan, por favor explicar en qué otros contextos usamos grab. Por ejemplo, grab a drink. Gracias.
Perfecto. Ese ejemplo de grab a drink también es muy, digamos, coloquial. Es cuando, digamos, tienes confianza con unos amigos y tú, por ejemplo, los invitas o armas un plan para ir a beber unos tragos o unas cervezas o de pronto un café. Entonces podemos utilizar esta expresión, por ejemplo, let's grab some drinks. ¿Listo? Y entonces en este caso, cuando utilizábamos el ejemplo de grab lunch, era cuando, digamos, no teníamos mucho tiempo y teníamos que correr a conseguir un almuerzo, entonces utilizamos grab lunch. Pero en este caso es diferente. Let's grab some drinks no significa como que vamos y nos tomamos algo rápido y que llegas al bar y te tomas la cerveza rápido. No, no sería así. Sino let's grab some drinks significa como, vamos a tomarnos unas bebidas o unos tragos. Podría ser así. O de pronto puede ser, no sé, un jugo o una bebida en general. Entonces, este es un ejemplo diferente. Let's grab some drinks, y también podríamos decir let's grab some dinner, también podríamos decir eso. Entonces es otra expresión que utilizamos, pero entonces para que tengamos en cuenta, la primera de grab lunch, sí es cuando una expresión que tenemos de pronto un poco de afán para poder almorzar, y la de grab some drinks, esa sí la utilizamos muy común cuando podemos decir como una invitación para ir a beber algo.
Así es, profe, muchas gracias. Dice, por favor, ejemplo de la estructura always.
Always. Bueno, acabamos de hacer un ejemplo con lavar los platos. Entonces podríamos utilizarle eso siempre. Always, como veíamos en la gráfica, es el 100%, es alguna actividad que tú siempre haces. Entonces, ese always es como la categoría mayor de los adverbios de frecuencia. Y como veíamos en el ejemplo, yo siempre lo colocaba después del pronombre o después del sujeto. Entonces, en este caso, si hacemos un ejemplo con una tercera persona singular, podríamos utilizar, digamos, ella. Y utilizamos el adverbio de frecuencia siempre después del sujeto, bueno, en presente simple, ¿no? También aclaré esto. En presente simple siempre va después del sujeto. Y a continuación va el verbo principal. Entonces, aquí podríamos sacar muchos ejemplos. Podríamos, por ejemplo, have lunch. Podemos decir, ella siempre almuerza a las 12. ¿Sí? Y aquí tenemos el ejemplo de ella siempre. Entonces, she always have lunch at 12. Si queremos de pronto utilizar, digamos, que ella se encuentra o, digamos, se reúne con amigos. Y digamos que sea los sábados. ¿Listo? Entonces, she always meet friends on Saturdays. Entonces, aquí tenemos otra vez el sujeto, el adverbio de frecuencia, que en este caso es always, Y bueno, si hacemos un ejemplo con always, recuerden que en este espacio que yo lo estoy colocando, ahí siempre irían los adverbios de frecuencia. Digamos, a la fija podríamos colocarlos ahí, porque yo les expliqué también que hay unas excepciones como el sometimes, el normally, que esos pueden ir al principio de la oración. Pero a la fija podemos colocar acá, ubicar el adverbio de frecuencia, en este caso always, y pues a continuación va el verbo principal y el complemento, pues que ya depende de lo que estemos hablando, y también les estábamos dando algunos ejemplos de cómo podemos extender nuestras respuestas utilizando o dando respuesta a los WH.
Profe, creo que la pregunta iba con la aclaración, con la siguiente aclaración. Lo que pasa es que la hicieron en dos secciones. Entonces dice lo que mencionaba el teacher de que el adverbio podría ir al principio de la frase.
Listo. Son excepciones y no son todas. Entonces eso es lo que tenemos que acostumbrarnos, y por eso decimos o invitamos a la práctica. Porque, digamos, te decimos, aquí siempre debe ir. Y lo puedes ver en una canción o en una serie en un orden diferente, y tú dices, pero ¿cómo así que se fue en otro lugar? Entonces, eso es también en práctica. Tenemos que ir también a leer un poco, escuchar música, leer las letras de las canciones y mirar digamos, ese tipo de cosas. Entonces, algunas excepciones que yo estaba mencionando era como sometimes, y podemos utilizar el mismo ejemplo de ahorita. She had lunch. Oh, perdón, aquí tengo un error gramatical. No es have, sino has. Y si lo cometí ahorita, también entonces el excuso es she has, ¿ok? Sometimes she has lunch at 12, ¿ok? Entonces miren que aquí yo utilicé el adverbio de frecuencia, lo utilicé al principio. Y yo estaba siempre diciendo que iba acá, iba después del pronombre o del sujeto. Hay otra excepción, o bueno, no son excepciones, sino que son, digamos, posibilidades. Entonces, por ejemplo, con el normally, ¿okay? Entonces, en este caso, normally también puede ir adelante del sujeto, y podemos decir, normally she has lunch at 12, ¿listo? Entonces, son como 3 de ellos, o 4, a veces son los que también en li, los adverbios, normally o frequently, ¿sí? Entonces, ellos pueden ir adelante del sujeto de la oración. El resto, sí, eso sí, digamos, sí es una regla gramatical, como always, never, often, eso sí tienen que ir acá. Eso sí tienen que ir acá. Y hay algunas, pues, excepciones, como el sometimes, normally, frequently. Entonces, eso sí pueden ir al principio de la oración.
Así es, profe. También sonaría muy raro decir she sometimes has lunch at 12. A veces también, digamos, nos podemos guiar si suena poco natural. Cuando ya uno tiene un poquito más de práctica, entonces uno ya puede identificar, quizás no suena tan natural o suena extraño cuando lo digo.
Correcto.
Profe, eso sería todo por el día de hoy. Nos queremos también saludar a las últimas personas que nos dijeron de dónde se conectaban: Villavicencio, Regional Antioquia, de diferentes partes de Bogotá. Muchísimas gracias a todos por estar conectados a una sesión más de Edu.Digital Bilingüe. Profe Néstor, muchísimas gracias por tu tiempo y por compartir tus conocimientos con nosotros. Queremos invitarlos el día de mañana a Edu.Digital Ambiente. No se pierdan nuestras charlas en Edu.Digital Salud, y queremos darles las gracias también a todo el equipo de producción detrás de Edu.Digital. Asimismo, estén pendientes porque la próxima semana tenemos las 2 sesiones en una sola semana, una sesión participativa y nuestra sesión de todos los miércoles. Así que queremos ver a muchísima más gente participar en estas sesiones participativas, donde ustedes tienen la oportunidad de expresar y de practicar su speaking. Así que muchísimas gracias y pendientes.